It was a late autumn Friday evening. The air inside the French restaurant L'Amour was filled with the aroma of expensive black truffles and the cool scent of perfume. I sat at the most prominent spot by the window, wearing a finely tailored black velvet dress. To commemorate this third wedding anniversary, I had specifically cancelled a meeting about a $30 million investment bank merger. The clock had already struck 9 in the evening. The seat opposite me, which should have been occupied by Shin Kaiju, remained glaringly empty. The Wellington steak on the table had long gone cold, the pastry soaked through with dark red meat juices, looking exactly like a crime scene. The young waiter approached for the third time, his eyes carrying a pity he thought he had cleverly concealed, almost pitiful. "Mrs. Shin, would you like me to clear this and warm it up for you?" "No need, thank you." I held the glass of red wine, my fingertips gently tracing the rim. At that moment, the phone placed on the marble tabletop vibrated. It wasn't an apology message from Shin Kaiju, but a bank deduction notification. "Your gold card ending in 8888 spent 131,400 VND at 2107, 131 4000. One lifetime, one fate." What an ironic number. "This is my supplementary card, with a global limit and no spending cap." Shin Kaiju rarely uses it, as he always maintains the image of a noble poor prince, aloof, proud, and seemingly untouched by the scent of money. I opened my social media page, my fingers lightly scrolling across the screen, and immediately saw Lin Yanyan's newly posted status update. In the photo was a diamond-studded Hermes Himalaya bag, with sparkling neon lights in the background and a man's slender, cold, pale hand. That hand was affectionately stroking the girl's head, and the engagement ring on the middle finger was exactly like mine, emitting a cold, harsh light under the street lamps. The caption read, "On this special day, I received the warmest, most unexpected gift. Someone said they would make up for all the romance of this lifetime for me." I stared at that photo for 3 seconds, then dialed Shin Chijo's number. The phone rang for a long time before it was finally answered. The background noise was very loud, with the sound of wind, the clear, silver bell-like laughter of Lin Yangyang, and the distinctive voice of Shin Kaiju, cold as ice shattering against a wall. "Hello, Suhua. I'm out handling some business, about the anniversary." "I'm really sorry, handling business all the way to the Hermes counter." My voice was calm, showing no trace of anger or joy. The other end of the line fell into a brief, deadly silence. Immediately afterward, Shin Kaiju seemed to have moved to a quieter place, his speaking pace still unhurried, carrying a sense of lofty certainty. "You saw, today is Yanyan's birthday. She had a tough time abroad all these years, and now that she's back, she doesn't have many friends. As an old classmate, I just wanted to show a little gesture, buy her a bag to make her happy. Don't overthink it, Suhua, you've always been generous. Don't let such a small matter upset everyone." "A small matter?" I let out a soft laugh. "Shin Kaiju, that's my card. Is there any difference in whose card I use?" Without my technical support for the Shin Group's overseas expansion over the past few years, could you have held your position as CEO so firmly? His voice grew colder, tinged with a hint of resentment. "It's just a card. I'll transfer the money to you later. I'm hanging up now." She's waiting for me to blow out the candles. The beeping sound echoed, like slaps straight to the face. The restaurant manager clearly overheard a few words as well. Standing not far away, he hesitated, wanting to speak up but ultimately holding back. The noble ladies and young misses at nearby tables lowered their voices, whispering and gossiping, their gazes sweeping over me like venomous snakes. "Look, that's Miss Su. From the Su family. She once lowered herself to marry a poor student, and now that he's made a name for himself, she's turned around to chase after the moonlight. TSK, spending 130,000 on a bag and even swiping your wife's card. This Shin Kaiju is really something." I slowly put down my phone, not covering my face to cry as they expected, nor rushing out to catch them in the act. I waved to call the manager over, elegantly pulling a black card from my handbag. "Check out." "Yes, Miss Su. Your total spending today is," no need to report the number, "and please open this bottle of 1982 Lafitte for me, to give to the ladies at the next table." I nodded slightly at those talkative young ladies, my smile not reaching the bottom of my eyes. Thank them for helping me realize a truth: some trash really isn't worth recycling. Under everyone's astonished gaze, I dialed the number for the bank's high-end personal customer service. Hello, I'm Su Hua. All credit cards, savings cards, and supplementary cards ending in 8888 and 9999 under my name. I request an immediate loss report and freeze. Yes, all of them. Also, cancel all authorized limits under the name Shinkaiju. The reason being unauthorized withdrawals due to theft. The professional and respectful voice of the staff. Yes, Miss Su, the freeze procedure has been initiated and is expected to take effect in 1 minute. After finishing everything, I picked up my phone again, liked Lin Yanyan's post, and commented, "What a beautiful bag. Too bad it was bought with my money. Has Shinkaiju not told you? All his accounts were emptied 30 seconds ago. Happy birthday, Miss Lin." After posting, I turned off my phone, pushing open the restaurant door and stepping outside. The late autumn chill rushed against my neck, making me completely sober. Shinkaiju, how much do you think that so-called aloof and proud demeanor of yours is worth? Without the resources of the Su family, you're just an ordinary office worker at best. Since you enjoy using my money to buy smiles from beauties, then I'll show you when you're reduced to a penniless student again. Will your white moonlight still find you aloof and charming? I walked toward the Rolls-Royce parked at the entrance, where the driver, old Chen, respectfully opened the car door. "Miss, shall we return to the mansion?" "No." I watched the neon lights recede outside the window, my gaze gradually hardening like steel. "Take me to old Zhong's place. I want to sell that marital home before dawn tomorrow." "But Mr. Shen is still on a business trip." "Oh no, perhaps he will return tonight." Old Chen hesitated a bit. "He won't be coming back." I sneered at that moment. The river named Compromise that had flowed within me for 3 years finally changed its course. "Shinkaiju, if you want to play with fire, then I will burn down the entire forest, leaving you in the ashes, weeping as you watch me ascend to the throne." The night was as thick as ink. The Maybach speeding along the city's Ring Road expressway toward the riverside wedding house. I rolled down the window, letting the cold river breeze brush past my cheeks. Just seconds after turning on my phone, the vibrations nearly numbed my palm. All of them were missed calls from Shinkaiju. The last message appeared, just 3 cold words. "Su Hua, have you finished acting crazy?" I sneered, my fingertip sliding across the screen, directly adding this number to the blacklist. "Crazy? No, Shinkaiju. This is called being sober." 20 minutes later, the car stopped beneath the most luxurious villa building in the city center, Tianji Yunduan. This is the wedding home I bought outright 3 years ago, a 2-story penthouse spanning 280 square meters, with windows opening to an endless river view. At that time, Shinkaiju stood on the balcony, turned his back, and said to me, "Hua Hua, this place is too extravagant. I don't like it." But what was the result? He lived more comfortably than anyone. Even the ergonomic chair in his study cost 50,000 yuan. The elevator door opened, and old Zhong, the broker, was already waiting at the entrance with 2 assistants. Old Zhong is renowned in the industry as a fast hand. As long as the money is sufficient, there's no property he can't sell. "Miss Su, have you really made up your mind? This apartment is currently valued at least over 60 million on the market. If you sell it urgently, the price will definitely drop by at least 20%. Old Zhong pushed up his glasses, his tone full of disbelief. "No need to reduce by 20%. I decisively opened the door to the house. The motion sensor lights turned on, revealing the entire home decorated in the cold, elegant style that Shinkaiju liked. It looked so restrained and high-end. "Reduce by 30%. As long as it's all cash, sign the contract tonight, and we'll handle the transfer procedures tomorrow morning." Old Zhong took a sharp breath. 50 million. This is like money falling from the sky. I just have a coal tycoon who recently returned from abroad looking to buy a house. He only cares about the location, not the furnishings, and can transfer the money anytime. Deal done. I walked into the master bedroom without looking back, my left hand pulling out several large black garbage bags from the closet by the entrance. I felt no attachment. The silk mattress we once thought we'd sleep on for a lifetime. The promises Shinkaiju made while holding me on it. Now, looking back, it only made me feel nauseous. The moving company captain I called had already arrived, leading over a dozen burly young men who filed in one after another. Except for this bed, along with these custom-made, expensive pieces of furniture, Everything else, I pointed to the entire wall of limited edition books, the rare wines in Shinchijo's study, and the high-end suits I personally selected from his wardrobe. Throw them all away, Miss Sue. Should we throw them into the trash bins downstairs? The moving team leader hesitated a bit. After all, any one of those suits was worth a year's salary for him. Throw them on the roadside, I sneered coldly. By the way, take his underwear, socks, and those research notebooks he treasures like treasures, and toss them all off the balcony, since he likes being aloof. Let him pick them up slowly in the cold wind. Old Jong, standing nearby, watched with his eyes twitching uncontrollably, but he didn't dare say much, only bowing his head to urge the buyer to place the deposit. The room quickly descended into chaos. The house, once filled with warmth, or rather, the warmth I had created single-handedly, turned into a pile of ruins within minutes. The rough movers dismantled the wooden cabinets, and the blue and white porcelain tea set that Shun Kaiju loved most was carelessly thrown into a cardboard box, emitting a crisp, shattering sound. At that very moment, the electronic lock on the main door emitted a hurried, electronic beep. Shun Kaiju had returned. As he pushed the door open and stepped inside, he happened to see the movers carrying his desk out. On his face, which had always been cold and arrogant, a crack named shock appeared for the first time. He was still wearing that expensive grey suit, only his tie was slightly disheveled, likely because he had rushed back from Lin Yanyan's birthday party. Suhua, what are you doing? He pushed the worker aside, strode toward me, his voice low and restrained. Why are you moving these things? And why did you freeze my card? When Yang Yang tried to pay, the card was declined. She cried non-stop in the store. Do you know how embarrassing that was? I sat in the empty living room, on the only remaining chair, swirling the glass of aged whiskey I had taken from the wine cellar. She lost face. What does that have to do with me? I raised an eyebrow, my tone indifferent. Shun Kaiju, look clearly. This isn't called moving, it's called clearing out the house. I've already sold this house. The 20 million deposit is in my account. From now on, not a single inch of this floor belongs to you. Shun Kaiju froze. He looked around, taking in the dismantled soft furnishings, and shouted in disbelief. You're crazy. This is our bridal suite. What right do you have to sell it? According to the property ownership certificate, only Suhua's name is listed. I stood up and walked over to him. He was a head taller than me, and I always had to look up at him. But now, the clicking sound from the high heels beneath my feet seemed to be stepping on his heart. All 2 billion for buying the house was paid by me, and in the past 3 years, you haven't contributed a single cent toward the management fees. Suhua, don't forget, the success of the Shun Group today. The Shun Group's success today is thanks to the investment from my Su family and the first 30 million contract I secured for you. I interrupted him, my gaze cold and sharp. Shun Kaiju, do you really think your so-called core algorithm is something only you can write in this world? I can lift you to the pinnacle of the investment world, and I can also push you back into the mud. Now, take your trash and get out of my house. I pointed outside the door, in the hallway, clothes, ties. Even his most cherished limited edition books were scattered in a mess in front of the elevator. Shun Kaiju was so angry his chest heaved, his originally deep, lake-like eyes now blazing with fury. Just because of such a trivial matter, you dare to go this far? I said I'd pay you back. Money, right now. Besides the bag Lin Yangyang bought with my money, what else do you have on you? I let out a cold laugh, pulling a stack of documents from my bag. This is the divorce agreement. You'd better sign it right now, otherwise, you won't be able to handle what comes next. Lin Yangyang sent a WeChat message at that moment, probably trying to show off a photo of her with red, pitiful eyes. Kaiju. I'm fine, maybe Sister Su misunderstood. I've already returned the bag. Don't argue with her. Shun Kaiju saw the screen light up and instinctively wanted to explain, but he noticed I was staring at him, my eyes filled with disdain. Since she's so understanding, why don't you go sleep on the street with her tonight? I waved my hand, and the burly men from the moving company immediately surrounded him. Please, Mr. Shun, the team leader, expressionless, gestured politely. Shun Kaiju had never suffered such humiliation. In this city, he was the esteemed president. Shun, cherished by everyone. But now, he was dragged out of the door by 2 burly men like a helpless chick. Suhua, you'll regret this. Without me, Your fund can't possibly operate, he screamed frantically in the hallway. I walked to the main door, right in front of him, and slammed it shut with a bang inside the room. Old Jong wiped his sweat as he approached. Miss Su, the buyer has arrived downstairs. The contract is here. Please sign it. The remaining 50 million will be transferred no later than 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I sign my name, the strokes sharp and decisive. Shun Kaiju. This is just the beginning. Do you think what you've lost is merely a peaceful harbor? No, what you've lost is the entire world. I'm very curious to see when that so-called cold and self-controlled President Shun becomes a wanderer, whether your beloved Yang Yang will shed a single tear for you. The morning sunlight streams through the massive glass windows of the Shun Group headquarters, yet it fails to dispel the frozen chill that permeates the first-floor lobby. I change into a pristine white suit, sharply tailored, and step into 10-centimeter red high heels. Each step I take echoes crisply on the polished marble floor, rhythmic and resonant. Behind me is a slender woman wearing gold-rimmed glasses. This is Lawyer Chin, known in the legal world as the Piranha. Shun Kaiju stood at the elevator door, his face pale and almost transparent, with dense bloodshot veins at the corners of his eyes. Last night, he had sat slumped in front of the door of the marital home that no longer belonged to him all night, and then was rejected again at the hotel entrance. All of this was clearly reflected in the crumpled grey suit he was wearing, even with a bit of dust clinging to it. The aloofness he had once prided himself on was now replaced by a wretched appearance, like a dog that had lost its owner. Suhua, have you had enough? As soon as Shun Kaiju saw me, the anger he had suppressed all night finally erupted. His voice, though lowered, carried a gloomy tone that was terrifying. You threw my belongings onto the street, making the entire residential complex a laughingstock. Now you've brought a lawyer to the company. Do you want to completely ruin me? Or do you want to destroy Shun Corporation? The surrounding employees gradually slowed their steps, their ears perked up like detectors. A few new female employees exchanged furtive glances. They had always admired the aloof and self-respecting demeanor of this President Shun, but they had never seen him in such a state of angry desperation. I paused my steps, elegantly pulling a stack of documents from my Hermes bag, my fingertips gently tapping. Shun Kaiju, let me correct you, I smiled. That smile even more dazzling under the morning sunlight. What destroyed you is your own greedy and weak heart, and Shun Corporation was originally nurtured to this size by Suhua herself. Today, I'm not here to cause trouble, but to settle accounts. Qin Lu stepped forward, adjusted his glasses, and spoke in a professional tone. Mr. Shun, I am the lawyer representing Ms. Suhua. According to the provisions of the Civil Code regarding marital joint property, during the marriage, you unilaterally transferred large sums of money to a third party, Ms. Lin Yang, without the consent of my client. This includes but is not limited to the Hermes bag worth 131,400 from last night, a Porsche from last year's Valentine's Day, and installment transfers totaling 5,200,000. With each number Qin Lu read out, Shun Chijo's face grew paler. This is the complete bank statement, video from the store, and screenshots of the boasting on Miss Lin's personal page. Qin Lu threw a copy into Shun Chijo's lap, the paper grazing his cheek and leaving a faint red mark. Mrs. Su demands that within 48 hours, you must recover and return everything, otherwise, we will sue Lin Yangan for the crime of illegally appropriating marital joint property and request a financial audit of you. You're insane. Shun Kaiju suddenly clenched the stack of papers, his knuckles turning white from the force. That's money I earned. As a partner of the Shun Group, I have the right to handle my share of the profits. Partner. I felt as if I had heard the biggest joke in the world, laughing until I nearly fell over. Then my gaze suddenly turned cold. Shun Kaiju, have you forgotten that the 20% share in your hands was originally held by the Su family as part of the dowry? The contract terms clearly state that if the marriage breaks down due to your fault, the Su family has the right to forcibly repurchase it at the original price. At that moment, the elevator door dinged open. The person who stepped out was Shun Chijo's biggest competitor in the company, Vice President Zhao. He had been holding a cup of coffee earlier, but upon seeing this scene, he immediately revealed a look of delight, as if watching a drama unfold. Oh, President Shun, what's going on so early in the morning? Your clothes are all wrinkled, didn't you go home to sleep last night? President Zhao feigned surprise as he approached, his gaze landing on the bank statement in Shen Qizhou's hand. He deliberately read it aloud with a meaningful tone, 5,200,000. President Shen is quite generous, so, the reason our company's research funds have been tight lately is because President Shen transferred the money to buy a bag for a beautiful companion. A wave of suppressed snickers echoed through the lobby. Shen Qizhou's ice-cold face flushed red to the point of almost bleeding. He was someone who cherished his reputation immensely. From his student days to his entrepreneurial journey, he had painstakingly built the image of overcoming poverty and hardship, indifferent to fame and fortune. But now, these bank statements were like invisible hands, tearing away the veil he had so carefully maintained. Su Hua, must you embarrass me in front of so many people like this? He gritted his teeth as he looked at me, his voice seething through clenched teeth. Our personal matters can be discussed at home. By failing to distinguish between public and private affairs like this, you're only causing investors to lose confidence in the Shen Group. Go home. I no longer have a home, Mr. Shen. The wedding house was sold last night, have you forgotten? I spread my hands, feigning innocence. You. And as for the investor's confidence, I stepped closer to him, my tone icy and just loud enough for the two of us to hear. They really should lose it, because just 10 minutes ago, I informed the board that the Su Group will withdraw all guarantees for the Shen Group, Shen Kaiju. Guess how many minutes it will take for those creditors and suppliers to storm into your office? As soon as the words were spoken, Shen Qizhou's phone started ringing frantically. He trembled as he picked up the phone, hearing the panicked voice of his secretary on the other end. President Shen, something terrible has happened. The bank that opened the account suddenly announced they want to recall the short-term loan ahead of schedule. The suppliers also said if the remaining balance isn't paid in full, they'll immediately stop supplies. And what's more, Miss Lin is surrounded by reporters at the company gate. She's making a scene demanding to see you. Shen Kaiju let go, and the phone fell to the ground with a clatter. I looked at him in that dazed state, feeling not a shred of pity in my heart, only an overwhelming sense of relief. Shen Kaiju, this is just the interest. I patted his shoulder lightly, brushing off a layer of non-existent dust. Your aloofness and arrogant demeanor are worth nothing in the face of capital. Enjoy the next 48 hours after all. This is your final display of dignity as CEO Shen. I turned and led Qin Lu away. As I stepped out of the building, I saw Lin Yang across the street, cowering behind her bodyguard, surrounded by a swarm of entertainment reporters with no way out. She was still draped in that expensive fur coat, but under the barrage of camera flashes, she looked no different from a clown being publicly humiliated. Shen Kaiju, don't you despise extravagance the most? Then I'll turn that extravagance into the grave that buries you all. In the meeting room on the top floor of the Shunsha investment building, the air conditioning was turned up high, yet it still couldn't dispel the suffocating tension hanging in the air. Shen Qizhou had changed into a relatively neat black suit, trying to regain the cold, strategic demeanor he once possessed. He sat at the far end of the long table, hands clasped under his chin, his gaze dark and fixed on me as I walked through the door. Beside him sat several senior shareholders of the Shen family, all with grave expressions. These old foxes valued profit above all else, and news of the Su family's withdrawal of funds had spread like wildfire through the industry. At this moment, the way they looked at Shen Qizhou was no longer as a young talent, but as a ticking debt bomb about to explode. Su Hua, you finally decided to show up. Shen Qizhou's voice was low and hoarse, carrying a hint of stubborn resignation. This withdrawal of funds isn't something you can decide on your own. The core algorithm currently held by the Shen family has independent patents. As long as I hold onto these technologies, I can find new investment banks to take over at any time. Did you think cutting off the Su family's support would force me to beg? I said nothing, just pulled out the chair opposite the chairman and sat down leisurely. Qin Lu pushed a heavy blue file folder to the center of the round table. CEO Shen, it seems you have misunderstood the ownership of the core algorithm. I crossed my legs, the tip of my black high-heeled shoes gleaming coldly and sharply under the light. 3 years ago, who helped you solve that deadly logic loop when you were just starting your business? Was it your Yang, who only knows how to flaunt her handbags on WeChat, Or me, your wife with a dual degree from MIT, who stayed up with you until 4 in the morning every day. Shin Chijo's face immediately turned pale. He stood up abruptly. That was developed together. On the patent certificate, you're only listed as the second contributor. Is that so? I let out a cold laugh and signaled for lawyer Chin to open the file. According to the Technical Foundation logic logs from that year, all records of the first version of the core source code submissions came from Suhua's personal account. More importantly, lawyer Chin adjusted his glasses, his voice cutting clearly through the quiet meeting room. Before the marriage, Ms. Su, in the name of Prosperity Capital, acquired the foundational framework patent on which this algorithm is based. CEO Shin, the so-called independent research you've been so proud of all this time is actually just a licensed use of Ms. Su's intellectual property. A collective, cold gasp echoed through the meeting room. An elderly shareholder slammed his hand on the table. Shin Kaiju, how could you not mention such a major issue sooner? So all this time, we've been investing in nothing but an empty shell that's just renting its core technology. Impossible, it can't be. Shin Kaiju frantically flipped through the patent transfer certificate, his hands trembling so violently he could barely hold the paper. At the time, you said it was a startup gift for me. The prerequisite for the gift is that you remain a husband worth my investment. I leaned forward, my gaze like a blade sweeping across his face. But now, I am revoking this gift. Not only that, as the backstage shareholder of Shungsha Capital, I officially declare that Shungsha Investment Bank, due to violating the patent usage agreement, will immediately cease all basic data operations. At the same time, as the largest creditor, I demand the initiation of bankruptcy restructuring. Suhua, you're trying to push me to my death. Shin Kaiju rushed up to me, his hands slamming on the table, his eyes bloodshot. If Shungsha is destroyed, what do you gain? You're a shareholder here too. Gain. I stood up, elegantly straightening the hem of my suit, leaned close to his ear, and whispered, the gain is that I can finally personally crush your cheap self-esteem, to show you what you really are after leaving behind the resources of the Su family and my brain. At that moment, the conference room door was pushed open once again. Lin Yang Yang suddenly burst in. She had clearly been stopped by the security outside, her hair slightly disheveled and her makeup half smudged. As soon as she entered, she rushed toward Shin Kaiju, wailing pitifully, Kaiju, they said my Porsche has been frozen, and that handbag too. The bank staff said they'll repossess it to offset debts. What on earth is going on? The seasoned shareholders revealed looks of disdain. At this moment, the fragility and innocence that Lin Yang Yang had always prided herself on, amid the high-stakes boardroom meeting, appeared utterly ridiculous and cheap. Get out, for the first time. Shun Kaiju shouted at Lin Yang Yang. Lin Yang Yang stood frozen, tears hanging on her eyelashes, her face filled with disbelief. You yelled at me. You once said Suhuan was just a money-driven opportunist, that you loved my purity the most. Pure, I chuckled softly, casually projecting a surveillance video from my phone onto the large screen in the conference room. In the video, Lin Yang Yang was sitting in a private room of an upscale private club, facing Mr. Zhao, Shin Chijo's #1 competitor. She smiled faintly and pushed a list of the Shin Group's internal clients forward, her voice sweet. Mr. Zhao, as long as you promise to promote me in the future, I can get all these documents from Chijo's computer. The conference room fell dead silent. Shin Kaiju stiffly turned his head, staring at the screen at the innocent purity of his first love, his entire body trembling violently. He had schemed in every possible way, believing he had both women under his control, but he never realized that the one he regarded as a pure, white moonlight had long ago stabbed him in the back with the deepest cut. Mr. Shin, it seems your little gesture has earned you quite a special reward. Mr. Zhao sat in his chair, leisurely taking a sip of water, adding the final blow. Since Miss Su wants to withdraw her investment, there's no need for me to stay here any longer. Everyone, I bid you farewell. The shareholders left their seats one by one, and as they passed by Shin Kaiju, their eyes were filled with contempt. In the empty meeting room, only Shin Kaiju, sitting slumped on the floor, and Lin Yang Yang, trembling, remained. I walked to the door, stopped, and turned to look at them. Shin Kaiju, from now on, you are no longer the cold, noble investment banking prince. You are just a failure, buried in debt, Betrayed by everyone, I pushed the door open and stepped outside. The sunlight was dazzling. This was the new life that belonged to Suhua. On a late autumn night, the chills seeped deep into the bones. In the grand banquet hall of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Nancheng, the lights were brilliant, and the atmosphere was dazzling. The annual Starlight Charity Auction Gala was taking place here. Gathering the city's most elite and distinguished figures, I wore a cold silver evening gown with a deep backless cut, its hem trailing across the deep red carpet like a flowing stream of moonlight. Mr. Su, I heard that the Shun family's investment bank has been liquidating recently. Shun Kaiju actually had the nerve to show up. What thick skin. A close female friend holding a champagne glass walked over, her gaze full of sarcasm directed toward a corner of the banquet hall. I followed her gaze. Shun Kaiju stood in the shadows, his once impeccably tailored suit now slightly faded. He still maintained that cold, arrogant posture, except the admission ticket in his hand was clenched tightly, the edges damp with cold sweat. Beside him, Lin Yangyang was trying to make herself as inconspicuous as possible. She didn't dare wear any expensive dresses, because all of them had been frozen or reclaimed by my lawyer on the grounds of illegal gifts. She wore a floral dress that was out of season, looking as awkward as a quail lost among cranes. Of course he had to come. I took a sip of red wine, my smile not reaching my eyes. He owes suppliers 30 million. If he doesn't find some fool here to invest, his desk will be out on the street by tomorrow morning. The evening party entered the auction segment. On stage was displayed a $1 million sapphire necklace set, the dream that Lin Yangyang had once marked in a magazine, coquettishly asking Shun Kaiju to buy it for her. 1 million. I absent-mindedly raised my paddle. The entire hall fell silent. Everyone's gaze shifted back and forth between me and Shun Kaiju. Shun Chijo's face turned pale. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a lowly plea and a trace of lingering anger. He whispered something to Lin Yangyang, who bit her lip, suddenly lifted her skirt, and walked through the layers of guests to the front row. She didn't come towards me, but headed towards the young master of the Jiang family sitting not far from me. Jiang Cheng. He was a notorious playboy in Nancheng, changing girlfriends faster than he changed ties. Lin Yangyang was whispering something into his ear, her body almost clinging to his. Jiang Cheng casually wrapped his arm around her waist, his hand sliding down her back, his eyes glancing disdainfully towards Shun Kaiju. Shun Kaiju stood 10 meters away, watching the pure moon in his heart, for the sake of a 500,000 difference in the bidding, fawning over another man. General Shun, your beloved seems to be discussing business with young Master Jiang over there. I tilted my head, my voice not loud but clear enough for everyone around to hear. A vein on Shun Chijo's temple twitched. He quickly rushed over and grabbed Lin Yanyan's arm. Yangyang, come with me, don't make a scene here anymore. Let go, Shun Kaiju. Lin Yangyang yanked her arm away, her voice sharp and unfamiliar. Go where? Back to your shabby rental where even the heating has been cut off. You can't even keep that Hermes bag, and my car is about to be repossessed. What do you have to support me with? You once said you loved me for who I am. Shun Kaiju looked at her in disbelief. That cold mask of his completely shattered. Can love replace a meal? Can love help me hold my head high in front of my sisters? Lin Yangyang let out a cold laugh, turning her head to lean into Jiang Cheng's embrace. Young Master Jiang said, as long as I drink my fill with him tonight, he'll help me settle that 500,000 debt. Jiang Cheng laughed heartily, gently patting Lin Yanyan's face, looking at Shun Kaiju with a mocking expression. President Shun, sorry about that. It seems your white moonlight also has a price. But to be honest, this kind of goods is only worth 500,000. A burst of raucous laughter erupted around them. The once unattainable President Shun, now a laughingstock, stood under the lights with his dignity stripped bare. He looked at me as if pleading for help, his eyes even carrying a glimmer of hope, as if thinking I would, like before, wave my hand and solve all his troubles. I just raised my wine glass, greeting him from afar. Shun Kaiju, do you see it clearly now? The sincere love you imagined, once stripped of the filter of money, is not even worth the mud beneath your feet. I stood up, elegantly walked up to him, and lowered my voice. When you used my card to buy her a bag, did you ever think there would be a day like this? Your so-called integrity was actually built on my wallet. Suhua, I was wrong. Can we remarry? My company can be handed over to you to manage, as long as you. He reached out, trying to grab the hem of my dress. I took a step back, my gaze cold as needles. Remarry, Shin Kaiju. You're not even qualified to be a security guard at my company. Your Yang Yang hasn't sold out her goods yet. Why don't you go help her count the money? Lin Yang Yang was laughing heartily at a joke from Jiang Cheng, not even bothering to glance at Shin Kaiju. Shin Chizhou's body swayed, and in that instant, the light in his eyes completely vanished. All his pride, all his deep affection, all his ambitions were nailed by the person he loved most onto the pillar of humiliation in this auction named money. I turned and walked away, leaving behind Shin Chizhou's desperate cries and Lin Yanyan's sweet, fake smile. Tonight, the wind in Nancheng is very cold, but my heart has never felt so hot. Late at night in Nancheng, the rain grew heavier and heavier. The icy cold raindrops fell onto the blue stone-paved road, splashing up a thin layer of mist. Shin Kaiju stood in front of the gate of the Tianji Yunduan residential complex that once belonged to us, drenched from head to toe. His custom-made grey suit was soaked through, weighing heavily on his slumped shoulders. With none of the high spirits of a new recruit in the banking investment industry left in sight, beside him were piled over a dozen huge black plastic bags, containing the trash that the moving company, following my orders, had meticulously packed up. Mr. Shin, please leave immediately. The homeowner has complained that the pile of belongings in front of the door is affecting the image of the residential area. The security guard held a black umbrella, his tone rigid, his eyes clearly showing contempt for someone who had fallen on hard times. I am the homeowner here. Shin Kaiju wiped the rainwater from his face, his voice hoarse, trying to hold onto his last shred of dignity. I live on the 28th floor, building 1, Shin Kaiju. Enough, Mr. Shin, MS. Sue completed the property ownership transfer procedures yesterday. The homeowner of this house is now Mr. Wang. Your access pass has expired. The security guard took a step back, as if afraid that the destitute look on him might rub off, and if these belongings aren't taken away immediately, we'll treat them as unclaimed trash and send them straight to the incinerator. Shin Kaiju stood frozen in place, his hands trembling. He fumbled out a crumpled gold card from his soaked jacket pocket. It was the only remaining subsidiary card he had left. Though the credit limit was only 50,000, it at least allowed him to book a room at the St. Regis Hotel for the night. However, when he stumbled and staggered to hail a taxi to the hotel lobby, what awaited him was the cold, albeit professional, refusal from the front desk manager. Sorry, Mr. Shin, all your bank accounts, due to involvement in usurpation of position and malicious transfer of marital property, have been legally frozen by court order. This card is currently in a frozen state. The manager pushed the card back across the counter, his sharp eyes glancing at the water dripping from the hem of Shin's pants. Additionally, Mrs. Sue has specifically instructed that all 5-star and above hotels in Nancheng will no longer accept your reservations. I suggest you try the small inn across the street. They probably don't require card swipes. Shin Kaiju slammed his hand on the counter. What right does she have? That's my personal matter. Currently, MS. Sue is the largest angel investor in our group. The manager adjusted his glasses, a mocking smile appearing on his face. Mr. Shin, your current worth, I'm afraid, isn't even enough to cover one breakfast here. Please leave, and don't waste the time of the customers behind you. Shin Kaiju stumbled out of the grand hall, just as a familiar Bentley came to a smooth stop in front of the hotel entrance. I rolled down the window, resting my chin on my hand as I looked at him. In the hazy rain, my face, illuminated by the warm yellow light inside the car, appeared exquisitely sharp and cold. Mr. Shin, isn't the rainy scene beautiful? I curled my lips slightly. This cold, desolate feeling, shouldn't it go perfectly with this kind of bleak, stormy weather? Shin Kaiju rushed to the car window, gripping the edge of the door with both hands, his eyes filled with desperate red streaks. Suhua, do you have to chase me to the very end? I have nowhere left to go. My phone has no credit, my cards are frozen, and even my change of clothes is soaked in the rain on the street. What exactly do you want? How do I want it? I chuckled softly, opened my phone, and played a surveillance video. It was a recording of his conversation with Lin Yangyang in the study half a year ago. In the video, he gently held Lin Yangyang and said, Hua is too strong willed, she simply doesn't understand a man's pride. Wait until I secretly change all the technical architecture of the Su family business. I'll make her take her money and leave, and this house will be yours. Shinchijo's face instantly turned from pale to ashen. Want the house? Fine. I pointed toward the 24-hour convenience store at the end of the street, where the dim lights flickered faintly. The cardboard boxes there are quite large, or, you can go find your Yang Yang. Oh, I forgot to tell you, Jiang Cheng just posted a story. Lin Yang Yang is drinking champagne with him on a yacht in Sonya, and her phone is turned off. Su Hua, I beg you. His originally clear and cold voice finally carried a choked sob, even feigning as if he were about to kneel down in broad daylight. Don't dirty my carpet. I coldly withdrew my gaze, and the car window slowly rolled up. The wheels rolled, splashing mud that clung precisely to Shinchijo's trouser legs. Through the rearview mirror, I saw that once arrogant male god huddled on the hotel steps, trembling and holding his head in the wind and rain. The pride that had once been his spiritual support, in that moment, shattered into a muddy puddle on the ground. Shun Kaiju, this is only the first night of sleeping on the street. The betrayals and schemes you've dumped on me, I will make you spend the rest of your life, bit by bit, paying back. The morning sun brought no warmth to the public opinion in Nancheng. Instead, it was like stage lights, completely tearing apart the veil of shame that Shun Kaiju had been hiding behind. I sat in the lounge on the top floor of Shungsha Capital, facing a massive screen broadcasting a live, impromptu press conference. Shun Kaiju had somehow managed to find a cleaner suit, though the cuffs were still slightly frayed. Yet, he tried to keep his back straight, striving to maintain his characteristic sharp and refined image before the camera, like a cold, elegant moon. Members of the media, Shun Kaiju spoke into the microphone, his voice slightly hoarse and broken just enough, his eyes revealing a pitiful endurance. Regarding the recent public resource consumption due to my personal matters with MS, Su Hua, I am deeply sorry. Su Hua is a woman with extremely high control tendencies. In our marriage, I have long endured her mental oppression and economic sanctions. I admit that Miss Lin Yang Yang is my first love, but between her and me, it is purely a platonic friendship. Yet, MS, Su used this as a reason to leverage capitalist power to comprehensively block and humiliate me. He performed very well in front of the camera, his eyes slightly red, portraying the image of a noble talent bullied by a wealthy, malicious wife, which immediately garnered sympathy from many netizens unaware of the truth. The screen began to flood with comments. Oh my god, CEO Shun looks so haggard. Can a powerful female lead just freeze someone's assets at will? The capitalists are truly terrifying. Do they want to push people to their deaths? I took a sip of bitter coffee and nodded slightly to the PR team behind me. Let's begin. Just as Shun Kaiju was about to release the so-called coerced unfair agreement, the door of the conference hall was pushed open by two bodyguards in black suits. I did not appear. Instead, the image of Lawyer Chin appeared on the large screen, along with the black USB drive in her hand. Mr. Shun, writing stories indeed requires talent, but the law only considers evidence. Chin Lu's voice echoed throughout the press conference hall through the loudspeakers. The large screen immediately switched scenes. The first video clip showed Shun Kaiju in his office, berating a trembling intern, even throwing a thick stack of plans in the other's face, his voice cold and full of aggression. You dare show me such garbage algorithms? Get out. In this company, I am the rule. The second clip was a recording between Shun Kaiju and Lin Yang Yang in a private apartment. Lin Yanyan's sweet voice rang out. Kaiju, if Su Hua finds out you secretly transferred the overseas profits of the Shun Group into this personal account, she'll go crazy, won't she? Shun Kaiju sneered, his tone full of contempt. She's just a money-making machine raised by the Su family. Once I've saved enough money, I'll stage a fake loss and force her to voluntarily give up her shares. By then, the Shun Group will belong solely to the two of us. The entire hall fell into a deathly silence, followed by a frenzy of flashing camera lights. Shinchijo's face turned from white to green, then to ashen gray. He suddenly lunged toward the projector, intending to pull out the USB drive, but was swiftly intercepted by the bodyguards. Shun Kaiju, you are suspected of workplace bullying, tax evasion, and illegal transfer of marital assets. Lawyer Chin stepped closer, each word hitting like a heavy blow. Mrs. Su has formally reported you to the tax authorities and regulatory agencies. Additionally, the mental pressure you just mentioned here are all your psychological consultation records from the past 3 years. The doctor has confirmed that you exhibit typical histrionic personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder, and have long subjected your spouse to emotional abuse. Shut up. This is slander. This is fake. Shun Kaiju screamed on stage, losing all his elegance. He lunged at an entertainment reporter who was live-streaming, trying to snatch the other's camera. Mr. Shun, please have some self-respect. The entertainment reporter dodged while shouting into the lens, "Everyone, look, this is the so-called aloof male god. This is the CEO of the Shun family's investment bank. He's openly trying to seize a reporter's equipment." Online public opinion immediately reversed. The tables have turned. A genuine scoundrel, living off others while plotting to seize their family fortune. Does this kind of person even deserve to be mentioned in the same breath as nobility? Disgusting, I suggest. Investigating whether his skills were actually stolen, Shun Kaiju completely lost control, his hair disheveled, as he swung his fist toward the audience, muttering incessantly, "I am a genius, I am the soul of the Shun family. Su Hua, what are you?" I turned off the TV, stood up, and walked to the window. Outside, the stock price chart of Shun Investment Bank was showing a nearly vertical downward trend, the numbers on the limit down board cold and unfeeling. At that moment, the secretary pushed the door open and entered. "President Su, Lin Yang is outside, saying she wants to see you. She was kicked out by the Jiang family and is now surrounded by debt collectors. Let her in." I turned around, a smile of delight curling at the corner of my mouth. Lin Yang stumbled into the office, knelt before me, and cried so hard she was barely recognizable. "Sister Su, I was wrong. It was all Shun Kaiju who incited me. He taught me how to swindle your money. He told me to get close to CEO Zhao to sell information. Please withdraw the lawsuit. I'll return all the bags and cars to you. Don't send me to prison." I stood looking down at her, as if observing a pitiful ant. Yang, you still don't understand." I bent down, gently patting her face. "I never considered you a rival. You and Shun Kaiju are just two gears grinding each other down. Since you love each other so much, just endure it slowly on the judgment seat of public opinion." I opened the window, letting the fresh air flood into the room. Shun Kaiju, the image he painstakingly built, has collapsed. His ambitions have shattered. Next, in the solemn courtroom, I will send him off on his final journey. Courtroom 7 of the Nancheng Intermediate People's Court is solemn and dignified. In the air, the scent of paper and old wood lingers, while the national emblem above gleams with an unassailable aura of justice. Shun Kaiju sits in the defendant's seat. In just a few short days, he has visibly lost weight. The grey suit hangs loosely on him, and the once cold, arrogant line of his jaw has now become alarmingly gaunt from excessive worry. He keeps biting his nails, his gaze vacant, until I push the door open and step inside. Only then does his gaze, like a venomous snake catching the scent of prey, lock onto my white suit. "Su Hua, you are truly ruthless." He stands behind the railing, his voice so low it's barely audible yet filled with bone-chilling hatred. "We were once husband and wife. Must you push me into prison to be satisfied?" I walked straight toward the plaintiff's seat, not even bothering to glance at him. Qin Lu neatly arranged a thick stack of documents on the table, his gaze sharp. The presiding judge entered, and the gavel sounded. The trial for the divorce and property division case between plaintiff Su Hua and defendant Shun Kaiju is now officially in session. Shen Chizhou's lawyer, a seasoned and profit-driven professional, stood up and attempted to appeal to emotions. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges shortcomings in the emotional aspect of the relationship. However, the core technology of Shun's investment bank originated from Mr. Shun. As his spouse, Mrs. Su secretly liquidated the company and froze personal accounts without Mr. Shun's knowledge, which has severely infringed upon Mr. Shun's lawful rights and interests. We submit that the emotional bond between the two parties is not entirely broken, and we request a reassessment of the assets of Shun's investment bank." "I object." Qin Lu's cold voice cut through the opposing counsel's provocation. The so-called oversight mentioned by the opposing attorney involves a malicious transfer of 5.2 million yuan. As for the relationship not having broken down, Qin Lu publicly played a surveillance video. It showed Shin Kaiju, late one night, sneaking into the Su Corporation's laboratory, attempting to copy the original algorithm data. In the footage, he snarled viciously at the air, "Su Hua, just wait until I get the source code, you'll be left with nothing." Shin Chijo's face suddenly changed, and he stood up abruptly, shouting, "That's slander, that's AI generated, order in the court." The judge slammed the gavel down. "Your Honor." I slowly rose to my feet, my tone calm yet firm, exuding the composure of one in a superior position. "I stand here today not because of the money he squandered, but to defend the dignity of intellectual property rights." I took from Qin Lu's hands a stack of documents thick with the dust of time, the very thing Shin Chijo most wished to erase from his life. This is the original logic manuscript for all current profitable products at Shin's investment bank. I flipped open a page, pointing to the red annotations on it. "Everyone, look, all the core formulas and structural logic are in my handwriting." As for the defendant, Shin Chijo, he not only used these patents to carry out illegal operations during our marriage, but even in a cross-border transaction last year, to cover up a deficit, he arbitrarily authorized a shell company. With severe compliance risks, Shin Chijo was like a rooster with its neck wrung. His voice abruptly cut off. He stared fixedly at that manuscript, the one I had painstakingly written stroke by stroke 3 years ago when he begged me to help him through his difficulties. "Shin Kaiju," I turned around, looking straight into his panicked eyes. "Did you think you were just stealing my money? No, you were using the patents under my name to conduct shadow transactions, according to the audit results. The amount of money you were involved in violating reached 3 billion. This means you are facing not only a divorce judgment leaving you with nothing, but also a prison sentence of up to 10 years. "No, impossible, you have no evidence," Shin Kaiju stammered, gripping his lawyer's sleeve tightly as if clinging to a last lifeline. "The evidence is right here." Qin Lu dropped the final bombshell. Ms. Lin Yangyang, in order to seek a reduced sentence as a guilty witness, has submitted all of your personal account books and computer passwords. President Shin, the woman you loved most, has personally sent you on your final journey. Shin Chijo's body suddenly stiffened, then like a puppet with its strings cut, he went limp and collapsed into the defendant's chair. His pride in his coldness, talent, and ambition, in this moment, before the iron seal of the law, turned to dust. The defendant, Shin Kaiju, committed serious errors during the marriage and is also involved in the crime of embezzlement. The judge's voice echoed throughout the courtroom. The verdict was announced. The divorce was approved. Shin Kaiju left empty-handed, required to return all embezzled assets. Due to involvement in criminal offenses, the case was transferred to the public security authorities for handling. When the judicial police approached to handcuff Shin Kaiju, he suddenly struggled and lunged toward me, tears and snot streaming down his face, with no trace of his former male god appearance left. "Hua Hua, Hua Hua, you're wrong. I'll pay you back all the money. Please save me. I don't want to go to prison. Think of the 3 years of affection we've shared." I stopped walking, standing tall as I looked down at the man kneeling at my feet. "Affection." I let out a soft laugh, my eyes filled with utter desolation. "Shin Kaiju, when you used my card to buy a bag for Lin Yangyang, when you tried to steal my lab data, did you ever think of affection?" I leaned down and whispered in his ear, "Didn't you always like things cold? The iron bars and prison floors should be cold enough. Enjoy it." I stood up straight and strode out of the courtroom. Outside, the dazzling sunlight made my eyes sting slightly, but in my heart, there was an unprecedented sense of relief. The first winter in Nancheng, the first snowfall drifted down silently. Today was the official opening of prosperous capitalism, which I founded. All of the most prominent business figures in Nancheng were present. The red carpet beneath the office building stretched for hundreds of meters, flanked by baskets of flowers sent by tycoons from every industry. I wore a pristine white wool coat over a deep red satin evening gown and stepped out of the building, surrounded by the crowd, ready to cut the ribbon for the inauguration. At that very moment, the periphery of the crowd suddenly stirred. "Let me in. I want to see Su Hua. I'm Shin Kaiju." A mournful, hoarse voice tore through the elegant violin background music. The security guards were trying to drag away a man who reeked of sour decay. He had a shaggy beard. The suit on his body was unrecognizable from its original color. The collar was worn to the point of fraying, and the leather shoes on his feet were even cracked wide open. If not for the bloodshot eyes that still held a trace of the familiar stubbornness, I almost wouldn't have recognized this as the once coldly arrogant CEO Shun. He couldn't go to prison immediately because, during the pre-trial period, his elderly parents back home fell seriously ill. He was granted bail to return home for the funeral, only to discover that all the family savings had been taken by Lin Yangyang. Now, he is buried in debt, with the charge of suspected embezzlement of company assets still hanging over his record. No financial institution dares to hire him, and he was even rejected from delivering food due to his excessively low credit score. Let him go, I raised my hand, signaling the bodyguards to step back. Shin Kaiju, like a wild dog with a broken spine, suddenly lunged toward my feet, but abruptly stopped just a few centimeters away from my red-soled high heels. His hands trembled, trying to grasp the hem of my skirt, but he withdrew them in self-doubt. Hua hua, CEO Su. He looked up, his face covered in pitiful tear stains, with no trace of what could be called integrity left. I was wrong. I was truly wrong. That woman Lin Yangyang, she swindled all my money. She even stole the money meant to save my mother. Now I don't even have a full meal. Please, for the sake of the past 3 years, give me a chance, even if it's just letting me sweep floors at Shin Corporation. I picked up a transparent umbrella, shielding myself from the scattered snowflakes. Looking down at him from above, Shin Kaiju, Shin Investment Bank no longer exists. My voice was calm, as if speaking of some insignificant trash. Now it's a data processing center under Shungsha Capital. As for you, I paused for a moment. My eyes filled with indifference as if looking at a stranger. Your current credit rating is extremely high risk. In the world of capitalism, you are already a dead man. No, you can't be so cruel. He suddenly became agitated, kneeling on the ground and frantically kowtowing. It was you who made me like this. You froze my cards, you sold my house. I could have been so wealthy. I was originally a genius. Genius, I sneered coldly. Beside me stood a tall, mysterious man whose presence was no less imposing. This was Mr. Zhong, the new rising star of the business world, who was attentively holding the umbrella for me. Mr. Shin, Mr. Zhong's voice was cool, carrying the authority of a superior. Ms. Zhongsu's time is measured in seconds, and your meaningless words aren't even worth a second of hers. Since you miss the feeling of coolness so much, why not try under the bridge in the western suburbs? It's free there. The surrounding celebrities let out low, mocking laughs. Is that Shun Kaiju, the kind who eats soft rice but still acts tough? TSK, truly instant karma. I heard Lin Yangyang was caught by the Jiang family in Southeast Asia and is kneeling in a nightclub paying off debts. He's probably going to prison soon too, right? Shun Kaiju listened to these discussions, his whole body as if drained of its soul. Lying limp on the snowy ground, he watched me, arm in arm with Zhong Xie, elegantly step onto the ribbon-cutting platform, watched the golden scissors in my hand cut through the red silk ribbon, watched the ribbons flutter all over the sky in the snow. He once possessed all of these things. He used to sit in the passenger seat of my car, pointing out the world. He used to spend my gold card freely, doing whatever he pleased. But it was he himself who shattered the protective charm named Su Hua. After cutting the ribbon at the inauguration, I walked toward the Rolls-Royce parked by the roadside, passing by him without even pausing. Su Hua, do you really not love me anymore? He desperately screamed behind me. My motion of getting into the car paused slightly, and I turned my head to give him one last smile. Love, Shun Kaiju, you think too highly of yourself. To me, you were never a lover, just a mistaken investment I once made. When there's a loss, you have to cut it in time and liquidate everything. The car door slammed shut, cutting off the nauseatingly pitiful sobs. Shun Kaiju, you kneeling in the snow begging for mercy is just as laughable as when you were swiping your credit card. The second-to-last chapter of this heart-wrenching romance novel is just the beginning of the suffering that will haunt you for the rest of your life. 3 years later, Davos, Switzerland. On the stage of the World Economic Forum, the stage lights shone down like daylight. I wore a sharply tailored dark green suit, my long hair neatly tied up in a high bun at the nape of my neck, and on my chest was pinned a modest yet priceless small orchid hairpin, its value rivaling that of an entire city. Below, Seated were the world's most influential political and business leaders, their eyes now fixed on the financial model dancing on the screen, the latest universal global financial algorithm launched by prosperous capitalism. The awakening of women is never meant to destroy men, but to build a fairer, more rational order. My voice was clear and resolute, echoing through the magnificent hall. As the speech ended, the entire audience rose to their feet in applause. In that wave of applause, I no longer felt the joy of revenge, but an unprecedented sense of vast freedom at the same time. Thousands of miles away at Nancheng Prison No. 1, another deep winter, in the cold, damp cell, Shin Kaiju huddled on the narrow iron bed, draped in a faded prison uniform washed to a pale hue. More than half of his hair had turned gray, and his once clear eyes were now clouded. Like a dried-up, withered well, the wall-mounted TV was broadcasting international news. When my face appeared on the screen, he sprang up from the bed, his hands gripping the cold iron bars, his throat emitting broken, hoarse sounds. That's my algorithm," he muttered incoherently, his fingertips bleeding from the excessive force. "Su Hua, you're a thief." "I was the one who came up with that." The inmate next to him pushed him away in disgust. "Give it a rest, old Shin. Stop going crazy. He's a world-class banker, and you're just an embezzling fraudster. If you had just settled for being the Su family's son-in-law back then, maybe you'd be up there giving a speech too." Shin Kaiju was stunned. He collapsed onto the cold cement floor, covering his face, letting out a groan that was almost animal-like. "Do you regret it for the past 3 years?" He had regretted it every night. He regretted that extravagant birthday party, regretted that extravagant 131,400 yuan gold card, and even more so, regretted underestimating a woman's resolve. He had thought Su Hua couldn't leave him, believed that gentle, capable homemaker would forever tolerate his arrogance and betrayal, but he had forgotten a hunter's gentleness is reserved only for the territory worth protecting. What about Lin Yangyang? The newsfeed next to him scrolled up with a wanted notice. A key member of a transnational fraud syndicate was arrested in Southeast Asia. The woman in the photo was emaciated and withered. Beneath the heavy makeup was a face full of weariness and sorrow. She was once the pure moonlight he cherished like a treasure, but now she had become a nightmare he couldn't escape. A month later, I returned to the country to handle some work. Lawyer Chin asked me. Shin Kaiju is about to complete his prison sentence and is applying for medical parole. "Do you want to see him?" I set down the financial report in my hand and looked out the window at the bustling streets of Nancheng. My train of thought paused for only a second. "No, I don't." My voice was calm. "He's already a speck of dust from the last century." But I still went to the prison's visiting room, not to reminisce or confide, but to completely seal away that past, through the thick bulletproof glass. When Shin Kaiju saw me, a flicker of astonishment lit up in his eyes. He frantically slapped his hand against the glass. "Hua Hua, you still came to see me, didn't you? You still love me, don't you? Get me out. I promise I'll listen to you from now on. I'll be your ox, your horse." I didn't pick up the receiver, just calmly looked at him. In that moment, I suddenly realized that I couldn't even find a trace of hatred in my heart. The man before me, despicable, vile, greedy. Once his fake cold mask shattered, what lay inside was terrifyingly hollow. I faced him and slowly made a delete gesture. Then, I stood up, without turning my head, and walked out of that heavy iron door. The air outside was truly fresh. Mr. Tar's car was parked under the shade of a tree. He stepped out to open the car door for me, smiling as he asked, "All done, all done." I got into the car, and the sunlight streaming through the window fell on my fingertips. Revenge has never been the endpoint of this game. The true victor is the one who, after seeing through the pettiness of human nature, still has the ability to rebuild their own empire. Shin Kaiju will carry his regret, living the rest of his life in poverty and mediocrity. Lin Yangyang will continue to struggle in the mire of sin. As for me, Su Hua, I have crossed the river named mediocre marriage, rushing toward the sea of stars that belongs solely to me. I opened my phone and sent an instruction to the foundation. Add another $1 billion to support legal assistance for women in the workplace. The name is Awakening. The car glided smoothly toward the city center, the prison gate in the rearview mirror growing smaller and smaller, eventually turning into a black dot. completely disappearing from the horizon ablaze with flowers and leaves. The script of a strong female lead has never needed the salvation of a male lead. I am my own light.